For more on this, we're now joined by elections expert Terry Tselane, and he joins us via our video link. Terry, thank you so much for joining us on SABC News this evening. Of course, there will be voter registration drive for those living abroad. And one would ask, when it comes to allowing those who are not in the country to still register to vote so that they can also practice their right to vote, why does SA practice this in the first place?
Well, the fact that the person has or the person is not in the country does not mean that that person fulfills the right to citizenship. And therefore, since 1999, when the Constitutional Court determined that South Africans who are not in the country should actually have the right to vote, this has actually been extended to everyone who is outside the country. And therefore, mechanism and infrastructure has always been put in place to make sure that those who are not in the country are able to exercise their democratic right by participating in the electoral process.
And when it comes to, the planning of this kind of voter registration, where it's not taking place in South Africa, what goes into it? You are saying that the infrastructure is already there because it's been practiced over many years now.
Absolutely. I mean, before the introduction of online registration, the embassies of South Africa were used as points of registration. So as you may be aware, that South Africans who are abroad can only register and vote in territories that are regarded as South African territories. So the embassies, the consulate are regarded as South African territories, and the agreement with the international relations is such that their infrastructure is then used to ensure participation of South Africans who are abroad in those embassies and those consulates. And therefore, when it comes to elections and registration, the staff would be appointed, and that staff would then be responsible for ensuring that the registration happens, as well as the election on the day of the elections.
And Terry, what about those South Africans who find themselves in war-torn countries where there is conflict? What happens to them, when it comes to this voter registration drive? Do they simply get left out because of a terrain where, not much is functioning in that country?
The Electoral Commission obviously would not have the resources to try to follow people wherever they are. And that's why the embassies and consulates and high commission offices are used as points of reference. So to the extent that people are still able to go to those embassies, even when they find themselves in a situation where there is conflict, then it means that they will be able to participate in the process. But if those areas cannot be accessed for one reason or another, obviously it's going to be very, very difficult for the Commission to try to find other mechanisms for those people to participate. Whereas it is possible at this stage for them to register online. When it comes to the elections, it would be difficult to try to cater for them because voting should actually be in person by going to the voting stations that would have been open in those embassies or high commission offices or embassies.
And how important is it for South Africa to practice this, so to allow those who are abroad to still practice their right and, to choose their preferred leaders to lead this country, even though they are not situated in South Africa?
As I indicated earlier, reaffirming citizenship of South Africans who are abroad is very, very important, and therefore creating an infrastructure for them to participate is essentially an attempt to try to say to those people that the fact that you are not in the country does not mean that you have forfeited your right to citizenship, and therefore you will be able to participate and determine the leadership of the country. But of course, it is not possible for that person to receive the ballot papers of all the areas where they come from. And that's why there is only one ballot that those individuals will receive, which is only for National Assembly. And, the regional vote or regional ballot will not be accessible to those individuals, because it would be very difficult to know which of those individuals come from a particular region, and then make sure that a regional ballot that is specific to that region follows them. And that's why traditionally what has happened is that only one ballot is made available, and that ballot is a national ballot, and therefore they only forfeit both the regional and the provincial ballot, but they still get an opportunity to exercise their right to choose their national leadership.
And how can the system be improved? I mean, you are saying that they're only allowed to vote for the national elections, and they can't vote for, be it municipal level or provincial level. How can this be improved to ensure that, you are still a citizen of this country and you still have some sort of an address in which you belong to when you are back home? How can this be improved to ensure that they are afforded the same rights as all other South Africans?
Well, in terms of making the ballots, both at the provincial level and regional ballots, accessible, it's going to be very difficult. As I've indicated, the logistical arrangement would make it extremely difficult for the Commission to follow an individual with a ballot that is specific to a particular region or to a particular province. And it would make it even more expensive to manage the electoral process. However, I remember a few years back when I was still part of the Commission, when a request was made by the High Commission in London that the improvement that has got to be effected should be to ensure that more stations are open in other areas so that people don't have to fly from other areas just to come to the embassy to be able to cast their vote. So the more the Commission and the international relations are able to agree to increasing the number of voting stations and creating some kind of mechanism of ensuring that South Africans who are abroad are able to vote without making the electoral process inaccessible or too expensive, I think that is an improvement that would actually be important for the purpose of ensuring that the democratic rights of South Africans who are abroad is entrenched and facilitated.
All right, Terry, thank you so much for your time this evening on SABC News. That is Terry Tselane. He is an elections expert there, joining us on that conversation when it comes to the voter registration for those living abroad. Of course, they'll also be afforded to take part in the elections taking place later this year. And as you heard there, they will only be afforded the right, though, to vote for a national, in the national paper. So they will only be voting for the president, if I can put it in that way. All right, let's move on now.